Modern Man. We are playing Hogaak Vine, and this time we're running up against humans. So this is our opening hand. Not too bad. We've got a Stitches Supplier into a Neonate as well. Bridge from Below, which we can discard to the Neonate. We want to get this Vine in the graveyard somehow. And then we've also got Bloodghast to go with those cards too. So yeah, it's not the most overpowered hand, but Stitches Supply can hopefully help us find some gas. We can get this bridge into the graveyard thanks to Neonate. And we also have Leyline of the Void, which might randomly hit our opponent depending on what they're playing. It turns out they're playing humans, as I say, but it could have been useful. And I don't think this hand is necessarily a mulligan anyway. I'll leave with Stitches Supply to see what we can get into the graveyard. And we managed to find a Bloodghast by doing that. Opponent has a Hierarch for 10-1, which is fine. So we don't find a second land, irritatingly. We do find another Stitches Supplier, which isn't too bad in lieu of getting an actual card. I'm going to discard Bridge from Below, add some extra power to the board, and then attack with a Stitches Supplier here. From blocks, I assume they were trying to get rid of the Bridge from Below, but thanks to Leyline of the Void, our opponent's creature won't actually go into the graveyard, it'll get exiled, so we don't actually lose our bridge here. So yeah, bridge only triggers when an opponent's creature goes into the graveyard, not if it goes into exile, so there is like a fairly nice synergy there with the Leyline, I suppose. So yeah, not the best of starts for our deck. We certainly are on the cusp of doing something very powerful, but we're a bit light on mana. We don't really have any sack outlets, which would be nice with this bridge in our graveyard, and also to get extra value out of these Stitches Suppliers. So things are going okay, but not too badly, not terribly well. Our opponent has a turn to Vile and nothing else, so that's pretty good for us. They obviously haven't got to a terribly great start, and they killed off their Honorable Hierarch for no good reason, as it turns out, so that kind of plays pretty well into us. We found our second land, so that's very nice for us. We're going to run out of the Stitches Supplier first, see if we can hit some more Bloodghasts, which we do, which is very nice for us. So we're going to be able to then play out our land and get 2 Bloodghasts back into play. So we're not doing anything too insane here, but we are amassing quite the advantage over our opponent. Our opponent currently doesn't have any creatures in play, despite being a humans deck, so that's pretty nice for us, and we have a considerable amount of power on board, as well as bridge in the graveyard. Certainly any sack outlet would be particularly good here. So our opponent has Mantis Rider. He's going to fly over for 3. So that's mostly fine. As I say, we don't think our opponent's got a 1-drop of any description, and also they can't really do a whole lot with that Mantis Rider currently. I mean, like, we're not going to overwhelm the board currently, so we can still attack into this, and it's fairly good for us. They're going to have to block the zombie most probably, otherwise we just get advantage from the Bridge from Below. So I suppose it's a decent blocker, and they do get a little bit of extra damage in. So it's certainly worse plays, but still feel like we're in a good position. We drop Polluted Delta, which doesn't really do a whole lot for us, unfortunately. So I think we're kind of committed to just seeing where we get to with this. Unfortunately, we can't really add a lot to the board as it stands. Faithless Looting or some sort of sack outlet, as I said before, would be nice, but we're still knocked our opponent down to 9. We have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 power on board, and certainly, and then we can actually cast this this Bloodghast. So we have lethal on board, although obviously our opponent is going to have this Mantis Rider as a blocker. He plays Champion, which seems fine. They play Phantasmal Image, which copies the Mantis Rider, which is a little bit less fine, and then the follow-up is another Phantasmal Image, which copies Mantis Rider again, so we have 3 Mantis Riders. So this is a fairly stunning turn of events for our opponent. So they can actually now attack for 9, and have kind of turned the tables on us pretty well, because these Mantis Riders can also block. So yeah, Mantis Rider seemed fine on turn 3, but when our opponent then generates 2 more, we were in a position which is not great. We end up drawing Bridge from Below, which in other circumstances would be nice, but it's not the card we need here. So yeah, we're basically dead. Our opponent can... well, I think we are just dead. We can't really do anything. We haven't got any sack outlets to go crazy with Bridge. We haven't got... I mean, Altar of Dementia, I suppose, would have been the best card we could have drawn here, and then we potentially could have gone off with that. Just sacking our Blood Guests and finding more bridges, and then eventually getting to Hogaak. But so that was probably our out here. But yeah, unfortunately this game turned fairly badly for us, thanks to a pretty nice draw from our opponent. So I tried the attack here just in case our opponent doesn't block as we expect. But yeah, we're done. We do get quite a lot of zombie tokens back, but unfortunately we are dead on the backswing. So yeah, I think in other circumstances, I think that that series of plays would have probably got us the win. But yeah, our opponents had a pretty nice draw in terms of their ability to generate multiple Mantis Riders, and that managed to steal the game away from us. Okay, so here we are with the sideboard against a humans. So generally humans is running Leyline in the Void as its graveyard hate. So I suppose we want to be looking at Wispmare, bringing in Wispmare for this matchup. I'm not sure if they got anything else. I suppose we could bring in Wear and Tear as well, just in case they've got any sort of Grafdigger's Cages or anything like that. But I suppose we don't want to spend too many slots on doing that. So yeah, certainly Wispmare seems like this is the kind of matchup that we want to be bringing that in. In terms of other cards, potentially we can bring in Dark Blast. We can sort of potentially catch a few Champion of the Parishes and Noble Hierarchs with this, and just pick off their creatures. But I suppose generally that's not what we want to be doing, but it might be worth just bringing in it instead of, say, Leyline in the Void anyway, given that we've got some cards that aren't terribly useful main deck. I mean, that, I suppose, just that card. And then I don't know that we really need to bring in removal. I think generally we want to be focusing on playing our cards. But yeah, I suppose potentially removal for Meddling Mage might be a good idea. So I suppose some combination of enchantment removal for Leyline, and then maybe just a few bits of removal for creatures to deal with problem cards. I suppose Meddling Mage is probably the most likely to cause us trouble, but there might be some other cards that could cause us a few problems, so bringing in some removal might be a good idea as well. Okay, so here we are with game 2 against humans. This is our opening hand. It's not the best, but we have Neonate to get rid of this bridge, and then from there hopefully we can draw into some extra action. So I think I don't really want to mulligan this hand, though I suppose we do have to be wary that our opponent might play Leyline, which unfortunately we do have, and we don't have an immediate answer to that. But it's not the end of the world. We still got our 1-drops, so we've got some plays to make, so we'll see how this one plays out. Opponent plays Champion, which is fine. Draw Godless Shrine, so that's our white mana for Wispmare, so that's a nice draw, I suppose. I mean, well, it's not the ideal draw, but it does mean that we don't have to worry about that. It's going to play Gravecrawler and pass the turn after attacking with Neonate. I suppose we could have held Neonate back to block, but I don't think it's going to matter a huge deal. This is the bit that we fell into problems with. Actually, I should have discussed in sideboarding. Diversifying our sort of responses to hate cards is a good idea when we're playing against Meddling Mage, because here Meddling Mage comes down and names Wispmare. I don't think I brought in the Wear and Tears for this matchup, so we actually are in a position where we can't really deal with Leyline of the Void now, because without killing the Meddling Mage, I don't really know whether we're likely to draw any of our options for killing Meddling Mage, if I even brought them in. I'm not sure I did, looking at this deck list. Yeah, we brought in the Wispmares. I don't think we brought... Oh, we got one Lightning Axe. Oh yeah, we do have a couple of removal spells. So yeah, we got Lightning Axe and Fatal Push, but the chances of drawing as those 2 cards in our deck isn't terribly high. And then we also need to draw Wispmare, so we're not in a great spot for answering Leyline. Potentially that's a reason to mulligan the hand, but in hindsight. And yeah, we're not drawing particularly well. It's that with Gravecrawler here. But yeah, we're in a pretty bad position. Opponent has a Mantis Rider to follow up. So we're going to get in for 8 here. We're going to block the champion and then just discard this Vengevine to see if we can find anything, but we draw into Hogaak, which isn't much good, and I end up conceding. I mean, we are not just dead, but I think we're in a pretty bad spot. We kind of need to draw Lightning Axe into Wispmare, and meanwhile we're getting beaten down very shortly, getting hit for lethal. So yeah, a slightly premature concession, but I think we just lost that one. Maybe we should have mulled harder into some answer to Leyline of the Void, I guess. I suppose that's really the takeaway, although I suppose our hand wasn't terribly good to begin with as well. This kind of fizzled out fairly swiftly thanks to Leyline, and we didn't really get anywhere very fast, so potentially we should have mulliganed a little bit harder on this matchup. But yeah, it seems like Humans is still a viable way to beat Hogaak, which is nice. It's one of my favourite decks, to be honest, in the format. So it's nice to see that it's still viable despite the power of Hogaak.